Coming up next, a Holy Grail interview, if there ever was one. You know, when I started doing this years ago, I made a list of 15 artists I have to interview before I die. And my top 3 were no-brainers. Well, I just got one of them. You know, they say to never meet your heroes. Well, I did, and he blows that theory out of the water. Coming up next, a very personal interview with a musical genius about one of my favorite records ever. He's the only artist to have 2 songs in the top 10 most played songs in history, including the number 1 song. Not even the Beatles have done that. Stay tuned for a very moving conversation next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you long for the days of classic MTV, when they actually played music, you're going to dig this channel of pure musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the big red button and click the bell so you always know when our new drops are happening. Today, it's truly the art of not freaking out when you're interviewing your hero. I'm really excited to bring you a landmark episode from our series Revelations, where featured artists go deep on their greatest albums and their greatest songs. Insight you truly won't find anywhere else. Like I said, when I started doing interviews years ago, I made a list of 15 artists that I had to talk to before I leave this planet. My top 3 I wrote down without hesitation. Now, Brian Wilson is one that I've gotten. I just got another one of my Holy Grail interviews. A musical genius who fronted the biggest band on the planet in the 80s and then went solo, and he's written countless standards since then, a few of which we cover today in the interview. I'm talking about a musical genius that the world knows by just one name, Sting. Coming up next, a very personal and moving conversation about art, music. We even discuss our fathers. If you could see just one interview that I've ever participated in, this would be the one. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to share the first part of my conversation with Sting. The Soul Cages, jumping into that, is one of my favorite albums of all time. I got interviewed for an article some years ago and had to figure out what my 10 favorite albums of all time are. And The Soul Cages is one of those 10.
Thank you.
It's interesting because an album, sometimes you'll hear it when it first comes out and you really won't understand it. It can take 30 years to really understand it so deeply in your heart. And that's how The Soul Cages was for me. My father passed away a few years back, and we had a complicated relationship, but music was the thing that brought us together. So that was the positive. And that was always an album that I turned to through my relationship with my father from, as a teenager all the way up until his death. And I know that was an inspiration for you. And jumping into all this time, about a boy wanting to bury his father at sea over the objections of 2 priests. I love this song. I love the way that you tell the story and how it unfolds.
It's really about my hometown. I was born in a town called War's End, which is the end of the Roman wall. Our house was built over a Roman army camp.
The Romans built this place.
And at the end of the street was a shipyard. It was halfway between the city of Newcastle and the North Sea. We built big ships. Most of my relatives worked in the shipyards, all were seamen. And so the sea and the symbols of the river and the boat were very powerful to me. Also, there was an analogy between the demise of my father and the demise of the shipyard. The government were closing it down. So again, it was a useful metaphor to try and cope with death. But that album is strange, as you say. I think it was my least understood record. And yet it had a constituency that kept coming back to it of the recently bereaved, and I say that laughingly. But actually, I still get letters to this day from people who said how much this album had helped them. And that feels very gratifying to me, because it was my protracted way of mourning my parents, rather than the traditional way. And that's how I did it. But I'm still mourning my parents, really.
Yeah, it's something you never get over. I know that you were creatively paralyzed, as you said, as you were getting ready to write this. You were blocked, unable to mourn. And tell me about the time leading up to writing The Soul Cages, how you finally broke through. I understand that there was kind of one line that came to you, and everything just kind of fell out from there.
I think I started the first line of the whole piece is Billy was born within sight of the shipyard. Billy was me. I was literally born with a great looming hull of a ship hanging over the house.
Billy was born within sight of the ship.
And that was a pretty powerful symbolic image for me that I never forgot. And they'd launched the ship out to sea; it would never come back again. And that leaving, that sadness and shock of leaving. I don't know if you ever seen a ship being launched, but it's like the end of the world. The noise, the chains, and this something the size of a department store moving backwards into the river never leaves you. And that imagery was sustained through a play I wrote called The Last Ship, which I'm still working on, which has had many iterations. But as a symbol for me, the ship, the river, and the sea are very powerful words.
Yeah, I love how you use that as a metaphor in all this time, the river and also burial at sea. Because cultures that bury their dead in boats, which are supposed to take them to the afterlife.
Well, that's really what my culture did. My ancestors were from that part of the world, and that's what they did 800 years ago. Sometimes by accident. My great-grandfather died at sea off the coast of Holland. All hands lost.
This was written in Normandy in Proust's room, right?
Yeah, actually, you're right. You're right. Yes, I forgot that. Yeah, I was staying at a hotel that Proust. I wasn't eating a Madeleine, but I was remembering times past and going through my own therapy with a notebook and a pen.
The song and the album, it takes you back to your beginnings. And it's interesting, around that time, Don Henley wrote in The End of the Innocents that somewhere back in the dust, there's that same small town in each of us.
Just that same small town in each of us.
It's just true. It never leaves us. And that's what's so great about this is you told the story of your hometown and the people and the community. I
still dream in that landscape. That's where I go in my dream. The house I was brought up in, the town I was brought up in. There's lots to resolve there.
The key lyric for me in the song was men go crazy in congregations, they only get better one by one.
Men go crazy in congregations, they only get better one by one.
Hallelujah.
That was my senior quote, if you can believe that. I use that as my senior quote. I love that quote. I think that's a great lyric.
Well, that's my religion, really. We only get better one by one.
Well, Why Should I Cry for You? It seemed to me like it was a heartfelt conversation with your father. It's a song that I think anybody who has had that relationship that's ups and downs with a parent, or especially a father, they can relate to that song. Why should I cry for you? Why would you want me to? What would it mean to say that I loved you in my fashion?
Well, I sing that song most nights, and Dad appears at my shoulder, and he's always welcome. So I sort of conjure him up in that song, and the complexity of our relationship, but ultimately how much I did love him. He was a map of buried treasure that I'd never actually got to until very late. I held his hands as he died, and I said, we have the same hands. And he said to me, son, you used your hands better than I did. And of course, that was the first compliment he'd ever paid me. And the timing was pretty devastating, but yeah, unforgettable.
Thank you for sharing that.
Why should I cry for you?
Island of Souls, that was a song that I remember as a kid. My dad was a painting contractor, and I remember working with him. And I was not mechanically inclined whatsoever, so I didn't get along with my dad in that fashion. But I remember as I was listening to this song, I would watch my dad work 6 days a week.
And 6 days a week he would watch his...
And to try to put food on the table. And he was, lower middle class and struggled to get people to pay him. And I just remember hearing that lyric, 6 days a week, he would watch his poor father, a working man, live like a slave. And, and then dreaming of a ship that would take you away from this place. And I remember that lyric resonating so deeply because that's all I wanted. I wanted him to take him away from this pain. And in the end, it is actually what took his life, breathing in those fumes and the horrible thing, which and he says a similar thing to me. You've done better with your work than I have, interviewing people and going after your passion instead of working for, and that song always meant something to me. And it's interesting that was the first song. And then you harken back to it at the end of the Soul Cages. And I love how you tie it together.
That generation did work in awful conditions of health and safety. In the shipyard, they were working with asbestos, red lead, terrible paint also. But God knows what was coming over the yard wall because we all ingested it. But that generation had to. They had no choice. We could go off and become rock stars, and DJs and shit.
Yeah.
We were very cool.
I think it's your greatest album, and I know that it's now the 10th anniversary of The Last Ship. I was so excited in 2013 when I heard the announcement, maybe it was 2012, that you were going to do this and it was going to be tied back, kind of tying back into the Soul Cages. And I think it's just your greatest work.
We're writing yet another iteration of it. It's a work that's never finished, in my opinion. The characters they come in and out, songs come in and out, new songs get written, new ways of looking at the arc of the narrative keep occurring to me. And I just love that process. It's kind of a plastic, very, very, not plastic, elastic process that you never finish.
You honor your parents with that music, and it continues on from generation to generation.
Well, it's an elegy, I suppose, for my parents and for my town, for the industry that's sustained it for 100 years. That's now gone. So, yeah, it's. I never know how to say this word. Elagic.
Yeah, there you go.
That sounds biblical. Elagic.
Well, moving on to 10 Summoner's Tales, Fields of Gold. You've conveyed that this song is about feeling joyous, but knowing that joy is going to end someday. I've read that in an interview, and I was really touched by that. I know that you'd bought a house near a barley field, and tell me about the structure of that song and putting it together, what it means to you.
It's very much in a British folk tradition. We're talking about tradition, talking about things that just keep happening. The cycle of life. And I think in modern people, you forget that our, very close ancestors lived exactly the same way that grandparents did or their great-grandparents did. And we're in this other, we don't know what's going to happen to us next year, or what life's going to be like in 6 to 7 years. But our recent ancestors didn't have that anxiety. They were going to do the same thing. They were going to bring in that barley every year. They were going to plant that barley every year. So the song Fields of Gold is about continuity. That's the word I was looking for.
As we walk in fields of gold.
The continuity of love through mortality. And, one of the greatest honors I've had about that song is when McCartney said publicly that this is one of the songs he wished he'd written. Now, I can give you a long list of songs of his that I wish I'd written. Long list. Him to name one of mine was major for this Beatles fan. McCartney's one of the reasons that I had the nerve to try and be a songwriter. He was a working class kid from an English seaport like me, and he and Lennon conquered the world with their own songs. Without that example, an entire generation of British kids wouldn't have even dared or even think about it. So I thank him and John Lennon for giving me the idea that maybe I could try myself.
Yeah. And he said when he wished that he had written, he said, "How dare he write that?" I love that. I think
he's allowed. He's allowed. You can do that.
Oh man, that's amazing. I know. I was going to bring that up. That Paul McCartney had said that, and there's no greater honor of the most played songs in radio history. You're the only one to have 2 songs in the top 10. Not even the Beatles have 2 songs in the top 10. Every little thing she does is magic is the 8th most played. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Know that.
But I just love the imagery in the song, and I love that it's the story is chronological in Fields of Gold.
So she took her love for to gaze a while.
Yeah, because it's about starting a young family, and then they grow up, and you get old. And
Yeah,
I'm living it, brother.
it's so true.
There's a line in the song I sing every night that always makes me smile. See the children run as the sun goes down. That's such a lovely image for me.
Oh, it is.
See the children run as the sun goes down.
That's such a great payoff because, again, another great bridge that you wrote. I never made promises lightly. There have been some I've broken, but I swear in the days still left, we'll walk in fields of gold. This is a promise, even though the narrator has broken promises. This is one that he won't. I just love that.
We've all broken promises.
Yeah.
All of us.
I swear in the days still left, you walk.
That last payoff, you'll remember me when the west wind moves on the fields of barley. And, you can tell the sun is jealous sky that when we walked in fields of gold.
Sky, when we walked in fields of gold.
So he does keep that promise in the end. And
I'm getting a little bit verklempt here. I'm tearing up here because I sing these songs often, and I have to stop myself thinking about what they really mean, because otherwise I get trapped here and I can't sing. So when I hear somebody else say them back to me, I'm allowed to get a little bit misty-eyed.
No, they are. There's only a few people that I can think of that songs have been literally. Last year I went to your concert with my son and with my wife, and now he knows all the songs because I raised him on those songs, just like my dad raised me on songs. Songs, they don't really show that relationship in advertising. They show the relationship of throwing the ball, playing catch, but they don't share the relationship of how much music means to fathers and sons, mothers and sons, mothers and daughters, daughters and fathers. That is such an important aspect of life and passing these stories on as we move forward in life.
Oh, my mom brought in Buddy Holly into the house, Elvis, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis. She was a big rock and roll fan, my mom. And she was a great piano player. My dad was more of a big band guy, Sinatra and Dorsey.
So you got a little of both. And I remember a story about you sitting by Brenda Lee and being able to share the memory of your mom playing Rocking Around the Christmas Tree.
Rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party.
I sat next to her at the Nashville, what's it called? The Country Music Awards.
Yeah.
But, Brenda Lee, my God. I said, Sting, how's Trudy? I'm like, God, she knows me. She's a legend. I still get a kick out of that. The legends of my childhood were real people I would eventually meet and sit next to. It's kind of surreal.
And we walked in fields of gold.
Well, I'd love to talk about your new song that's coming out. I Wrote Your Name Upon My Heart. And I know that's going to be released on September 6th. Tell me about that song.
It's always my intention to surprise people with whatever comes out with my name on it. I don't want people to be complacent and think, I know exactly what this guy's going to come out with now because of A, B, and C. I want people to go, wow, I didn't expect that. And I love doing that. You know, when I made a record with Shaggy, Sting and Shaggy, people said, what the hell is Sting and Shaggy, for God's sake?
So there is only one, just one life to live.
And yet, you know, we got a Grammy.
Yeah.
Or I made a lute record from 16th century art songs. What the hell is that? I just want to do things which make people just, you know, uncomfortable or you know, shake their heads and go, what's he doing? And I wrote Your Name Upon My Heart. It was just basically 3 chords, you know, played on a Telecaster and little else. And it's a very basic love song, but in a tradition that I respect and love. And it's unexpected.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was actually going to say that you're the only artist that I can think of that has done that in my lifetime. That I've always been a fan since the days of the Police, and I buy the album the day it comes out. And every time I'm surprised. I can never pigeonhole, Sting's next album was going to sound like this. It was always something different. And even within the album itself, you're going all over the place, like 10 Summoners Tales is like that, where every song it's a gift and it's a new perspective and a new musical perspective even.
I mean, it's one way I've chosen to live my creative life. The other way is to really get into one groove and stay there and actually perfect that groove forever and ever and ever. And it works, and it's incredibly powerful. I'm thinking of AC/DC, wonderful band, fantastic collection of songs, but they stay within the same very rigid parameters, and they do it so greatly. I'm much more of a gadfly. Look at that. Oh, look at that. Hey, what about what's behind me? That's me. But at the same time, I respect the other route. I really do. But there's no one way of doing things, in my opinion.
Make sure to get Sting's new single, I Wrote Your Name Upon My Heart. Great song. You can get it at the link below. Also catch him on tour. We'll link to that as well. Stay tuned for more from this interview coming soon. Make sure to leave us a comment about Sting and the Soul Cages, Fields of Gold. What are your memories of these songs, of these records? What are your thoughts on the new song and on the interview? Let's have a great discussion below. Make sure to subscribe below so you never miss out. You can be a part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.